In this reflective practice video, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the issues I faced during the post-production phase of my short film. Editing is often referred to as the invisible art, because when it is done well, it often goes unnoticed by the audience. However, it has a much larger impact than what you would think at first glance. Walter Murch, an editor known for his work on the Godfather trilogy, once said the following: "The editor is the only person that can add to and take away from what's been shot, and the only person with a complete overview of the film." In Murch's book In the Blink of an Eye, he highlights the unique position that editors are in, having the ability to shape the final story. The editor has control of continuity, pacing, and the overall emotional resonance of the piece. So what is editing exactly? At its core, editing is the art of selecting and combining shots to create a compelling story. This process not only requires technical skill, but a deep understanding of storytelling. Through precise cuts and transitions, the editor can guide the audience's emotions and attention, ensuring that the story unfolds in the most impactful way. The relationship between the director and editor is vital, as the two job roles often work really closely together when on a production, which is why they need to trust and communicate with each other to ensure that they have the same understanding of the story. A good example of this partnership working well would be between director Martin Scorsese and his editor Thelma Schoonmaker, who edited many of Scorsese's films, such as The Raging Bull and The Departed. Their relationship has been described as one of mutual respect and constant communication. Schoonmaker comments on this, stating the following: "We really have the same taste in film, which is important. We talk endlessly about the film, its themes, and what we're trying to accomplish." In my own project, Vanguard, I played the role of both director and editor, which put me in a unique position trying to balance both the roles. While directing, I tried to focus on getting the best performances I could out of my actors, and also the best possible shots from the crew. And in the cutting room, I was tasked with sifting through all of the footage, trying to find the best takes out of everything we shot, in order to tell a compelling story. One thing I was actually able to do, due to my unique situation, was shoot with the edit in mind. Being an editor playing the role of a director, I was able to offer insight to the director of photography and camera operators about how certain shots would cut together in the edit. So now I'm going to take you through some of the challenges I faced during the edit, some of which were a result of the issues we faced on the day of the shoot. The first issue we faced was during the shooting process of scene 3. Due to the delay in props and costumes being delivered late, we had to make the most of the day and shoot what we could. As you can see, we used the prop musket rifles to shoot scene 3, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is a few centuries too early for World War II. And in the previous scene that we actually shot the next day, we used the replica Lee Enfield rifle props. Now, other than being a massive historical inaccuracy, this also created another problem, being that it was now a continuity error. This continuity error could be spotted by viewers and really take them out of the immersive experience, but it also takes away from the authenticity and accuracy of the film. Studio Binder actually addressed the importance of continuity editing on their website, and I think they had some interesting things to say. The goal of continuity editing is to keep the illusion of time and space in the film intact. If it is broken, it can be a distraction to an audience member, removing them further from the film. However, I don't believe that this is necessarily always the case. And the appearance of continuity errors have a less of an impact on audiences than you might think. Editor Thelma Schoonmaker comments about the topic of continuity editing. "The priority is absolutely on the best take for performance, and frankly I don't understand why people get so hung up on these issues. It doesn't matter. Know why? Because you're being carried along by the power of the film. While I do believe it is important to maintain the integrity of your film, as well as the historical accuracy of it, and I also think you should do your best to minimise these continuity errors. However, it should not be the be-all and end-all of how you shape your cut." So how did I actually get around this continuity error of mine? Well, knowing I couldn't cut the most climactic scene out entirely, and had no time to reshoot due to the tight schedule and limited resources we had, I did my best to cut round the musket rifle the best I could. By using close-up and mid-shots, I limited the rifle's time on screen. By doing this, it only showed part of the rifle at any given time. I avoided shots where the entire rifle was in frame, and only cut to wide shots when the actor's back was facing the camera, allowing his body to cover the majority of the rifle. Well, I learned the importance of the role planning and the management of props play in keeping the integrity of the film. However, I did learn something unexpected when researching into continuity. I learned that it isn't as important when compared to overall story. And while it's important to have everything in its exact place, it's not the end of the world if something slips through the cracks. I shouldn't have spent so much time trying to make the continuity perfect, as in doing that it impacts the story in a negative way. There are multiple continuity errors in Vanguard, and that's okay, because that's often not what people are focused on. It's the journey that the story takes the audience member on. That's what will hold their attention, and I will take this lesson and mindset into future projects. Also, on a side note, did you actually notice the fact that my shirt had changed colour and the fact that I'm also wearing a jacket right now? As well as my cap being on back to front. I littered this video with a bunch of continuity errors just to prove my point. You're more focused on what I'm saying. And the fact that my bamboo plant's now a bonsai tree doesn't take away from the things I've been saying. Go back and rewatch this section of the video and see how many continuity errors you can actually spot. Right, so let's move on to the next issue. Now, I've talked a little bit before about the importance of coverage in a previous reflective practice video, and I will likely be repeating myself a little bit. But I believe it's important to reiterate those points just so everyone is on the same page and understands the full context. So the issue boils down to the late deliveries of the costumes, pushing back the shooting schedule. This put immense pressure on myself and the team to get everything shot with the limited time we had. This resulted in me as the editor receiving a lack of coverage, which is a serious problem. Now, to describe why this is a serious problem, I just want to go into explaining what coverage is, just so everyone's on the same page. Coverage refers to the variety of shots captured during a scene. This could include wide shots, mid shots, and close-up shots. By shooting a lot of coverage, it allows for more flexibility in the edit, giving myself or the editor multiple options to construct the scene. It enables smoother transitions and the ability to cut around continuity errors. As an example of this, I would not be able to cut around the rifle issue if we didn't shoot as much coverage as we did for that particular scene, because if it's not shot, it can't be edited. Now, with that in mind, I'm sure you can guess why not having enough coverage for arguably the most impactful and emotional scene in my film would be a problem. It led to awkward cuts that disrupted the narrative flow and felt janky overall. Now, at one point I'd edited myself into a corner, with supposedly no other way out other than a harsh jump cut, which isn't what you want in film editing. Each cut's supposed to flow nicely into one another and flow alongside the story, and the way that I'd cut this scene really took me out of the narrative experience when I was watching it as an audience member. So how did I resolve this problem? Well, to solve that problem in particular, I employed a technique that I've been using throughout the entirety of this video to hide the cuts between takes. Due to the film being shot in 4K, I was able to digitally punch in and reframe a wide shot, giving off the illusion that we shot close-ups and mid-shots. This hid the cut a lot cleaner than what I originally had, and no longer disrupted the flow of the piece. Through this experience, I've learned the importance of coverage and how a lack of it can really impact the editing process. As I believe I've said in a previous video, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So the takeaway is the more coverage you shoot, the better the result will be. This issue in particular pushed my creative problem-solving skills to the max, as I spent a lot of time trying to recut that scene and feeling like I got nowhere. I also learned how integral the role of an editor is to the production process, as I personally believe that their job can make or break the film. Now on to the third and final issue I'll be talking about in this video. On the first day of the shoot, we turned up to set, and we found that the location was next to a main road, and the passing cars actually were getting picked up on the microphones we used for recording. This really reduced the audio quality, making it difficult for the audience to focus on what was being said, and it could also potentially break the immersion of the film. Star Wars director George Lucas states that sound and music are 50% of the entertainment in a film. In order to tackle this issue, I utilised Foley recording. Fortunately, in addition to having the audio captured on a boom pole, each actor was mic'd up with a radio mic that isolated their voices. This meant that when I dragged the audio file into the edit, I would get 4 separate tracks, one for atmosphere and the 3 isolated actors' voices. As a result, I was able to go out and re-record Foley for every action taken by the actors, from their footsteps to the rustling of their clothes and even the room noise and atmosphere. I would then use those sounds to digitally replace the sound of the motorway that was overbearing. This allowed for a much more immersive experience for the viewer and added to the overall immersion of the story as it unfolded. So what are the key takeaways? I learned how much of an impact good sound design has on a production, and it should be prioritised just as much, if not more, than the visuals. I was also able to develop my technical skills when digitally replacing the sound of the motorway through the clever use of Foley, and having to do this really highlights the significance of having backup plans for when something goes wrong, and also giving yourself time to fix it. The challenges I faced in post-production highlight the importance of planning and the effect production and pre-production have later down the creative pipeline. Each of these issues have taught me a valuable lesson that I will take with me on future projects. ensuring a smoother production process and more seamless edits.